very frightening moments unfolding in eastern Japan along the Kinagawa River.
Japan has been pounded with heavy rain for 2 days in a row. This is the 18th typhoon to hit Japan this year.
September 2015. 20 inches of rain pelts down on Joso City just outside Tokyo, Japan. The river that flows through the city can't contain this unprecedented rainfall. The river floods, and 65,000 people find themselves trapped in a watery nightmare. This, despite the fact that Tokyo has the most advanced flood prevention system in the world.
Japan is prone to so many different types of natural disasters, including the flooding and potential for mudslides that we are seeing right now.
But that system did not anticipate the changes this century brings. Rising sea levels and stronger, more frequent rainstorms than have ever been recorded.
Tokyo's defense line is constructed to endure a certain amount of rain. The reality is the embankment is not strong enough to withstand such force.
The world's great cities face threats they have never before encountered. New York, Tokyo, London, Miami. The threats come from the sea, from above and from below. These are the problems and their solutions. For when the water comes.
More than 170,000 people received evacuation orders, and we know dozens of them were stranded in their homes. Even a man holding onto a light pole, waving for the Japanese military helicopters to come and rescue him.
From June to October, an average of 20 typhoons approach Japan each year. But the typhoon that hit Joso City in September 2015 was different. The area had seen stronger typhoons, but never before had the rain fallen so hard.
This is the Kinu River. In Chinese letters, the name is spelled as Angry Demon. My father-in-law was also here. He came with me because he was worried. And as soon as he said, "Watch out," the water came rushing in.
Hiromi Shinozaki and her father-in-law were among the people swept away in the sudden deluge. They clung to a floating piece of timber to avoid drowning. Torrential waters washed everything away in residential neighborhoods. Hiromi was one of dozens of stranded residents rescued by helicopters that day, as these people were.
Holding on to the timber, we hoped that as long as our faces were above the surface of the water, we would be okay. We held on as best we could, but we weren't able to keep a hold on it, so we had to swim for our lives.
They finally made it to shore where they were still trapped.
People were stuck and needed help everywhere. They were waving to helicopters, calling for help.
They
were hovering above us. One rescuer came down. But because of the fierce current, he got washed away. I tried to hold on in spite of the strong wind. It was really hard, but they finally pulled me up to safety.
上に一気に上げてもらって
Her father-in-law was also rescued. In fact, only 2 people died. 7,000 homes and buildings in Joso City were damaged or destroyed in that flood. Joso City was hit with 20 inches of rain in 24 hours. If that much rain had fallen on Tokyo, just 30 miles away, the results would have been even more catastrophic. Tokyo is the largest city in the world, with 38 million people in the greater Tokyo area. Without this vital city, Japan's economy would collapse, which is why protecting this city matters.
Tokyo is like the Rolls-Royce of city and engineering. It has most of the high-tech system that you can find in the world.
Dr. Christopher Gomez of Kobe University studies the threat Tokyo faces from the rising sea.
Tokyo is the economic engine of Japan, and Japan is one of the major engine of the world economy. So all of this is interconnected. If you start to have a major flood on Tokyo, we're all going to pay it, and very directly actually.
最大のその東京が自然災害で一番危ない都市だというふうに
Many insurance companies around the world, such as Lloyd's or Swiss Re, have assessed Tokyo as the most dangerous city in the world. And in their assessment, they say Tokyo's preparation for flooding is not enough.
されています。人々の心の中には
So the true risk to Tokyo lies in people believing that they are protected and safe,
東京の危険性だというふうに
when they are not at all.
Understanding Tokyo begins with a picture of the city's relationship with the sea. It sits on the shore of Tokyo Bay, which connects to the Pacific Ocean. To the city's east is the Edo River, and its western border runs along the Tama River. In all, 107 rivers run through the city. Water is the heart and veins of Tokyo. Though some areas are below sea level, the city sits 130 feet above it on average, compared with New York at just over 30 feet, or Miami at 6 feet. Tokyo's higher ground suggests relative safety as oceans rise around the world. But the difference with Tokyo is the wide range of threats it faces, more than any other city on the planet. Earthquakes, tsunamis, a unique quicksand phenomenon called liquefaction, and above all, powerful rainstorms that come with typhoons. Typhoons pound Tokyo with rain from June to October every year. The city gets 60 inches of rain per year, 3 times the legendary rainfall of London. But this isn't new.
"32 inches of rain deluges heavily populated Kyushu, Japan's southernmost major island. Low-lying areas where citizen towns are concentrated were hardest hit. The record torrents brought the island's streams and rivers to overflow. A surging tide of destruction swept through the area near Nagasaki, leaving in its wake a sea of mud, debris, and death."
In the half-century since that 1954 deluge, the heavy precipitation from these storms has become 30% greater and more intense than ever before in the city's recorded history. In 2018, Typhoon Maria strikes Japan's southwest, bringing the country's worst flooding and mudslides in 35 years. Millions of people are displaced from their homes, throwing Japan into a state of emergency. Over 200 people are dead, and the damage is estimated in the billions of dollars, with roads, bridges, and railways destroyed. The people of Japan reel from the disaster, but fear worse is still to come from even more powerful typhoons.
The behavior of the typhoons around Japan in recent years shows that they are clearly different from the ones in the past.
Dr. Tomoya Shibayama has been studying typhoons and their rainfall for nearly 40 years.
Until recently, it was common for a typhoon to lose its intensity as it got closer to Japan because the sea surface temperature was colder. One of the recent changes is that typhoons continue to grow as they approach Japan because the sea surface temperature is warmer, so the typhoon does not lose its power.
Sea surface temperatures around Japan are expected to rise by almost 4 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100. This means storms will increase in intensity as they approach the island nation.
Until now, we have been referring to the Ise Bay typhoon as our benchmark.
The Ise Bay typhoon is also known as Typhoon Vera. In 1959, it hit Japan with 20 inches of rain and a 13-foot storm surge. Some 5,000 people died, and Vera did over $2 billion of damage, Japan's deadliest and costliest typhoon.
But in the future, I think we need to be prepared for even bigger storm surges.
Flooding is a problem Tokyo has endured for 4 centuries. In the 20th century, after Typhoon Vera, the city found solutions through elaborate engineering. Water is diverted to rivers through a series of canals and pipes, which all flow back into the sea. And the city's main rivers are contained by levees, which have been built up over decades to prevent flooding in low-lying areas.
The limit of the Arakawa River's defense is rainfall of 20 inches in 3 days. The levees are built based on such a plan. So if the same kind of rain that fell on the Kinu River would fall on Tokyo, I have to say that the reality is the embankment is not strong enough to endure such force. Tokyo is defenseless against such rainfall. The moment the embankment breaks, a high wave, like a tsunami, would hit residential areas.
Stronger, wetter typhoons are just one of Tokyo's problems. Another is tsunamis triggered by earthquakes. Japan is situated on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a tectonic plate that is responsible for 90% of the world's earthquakes. Japan records more of them every year than any other country on Earth, 1,500 earthquakes. With sea levels rising, the aftershocks of tsunamis are deadlier than ever. In 2011, an earthquake triggered a tsunami, leading to a meltdown at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. The tsunami set off the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl, and it woke the world up to the constant danger Japan faces from the sea.
People realized that they had to recognize the destructive power of the water. If the river embankment in Tokyo breaks, residential areas would be hit by waves as large as the tsunami, which destroyed Fukushima.
The 2011 earthquake did impact Tokyo, 150 miles away. Yoshitaka Udagawa owns an exotic fish shop in Urayasu, a city on Tokyo's outskirts.
I felt a massive jolt with a giant thud. We have many earthquakes in Japan, so I thought it's an earthquake again. But I had never experienced such an intense earthquake. It continued, boom, boom, boom.
Udagawa fled his store into the street and the earthquake's fury.
It was difficult to walk. The poles were really swaying in all directions. The ground was shaking. I continued walking and heard a noise when I got to this point. You see that dark part over there? There was something shooting out of it, like oil blowing out.
The water's gushing out everywhere. The ocean seems to be coming up.
The dark liquid gushing from the ground was not oil, but water and mud. A process called liquefaction was causing the groundwater to push up to the surface. About 10% of Tokyo is built on low-lying sediment along the city's coast. The shaking effect from the earthquakes creates a form of liquid earth, like quicksand. Liquefaction is now a regular side effect of earthquakes in Tokyo.
Under your feet, you have up to 125 meters of soft sediment mixed with water. The problem with it is that mixture between water and sediment. Each time you have a shake, the water gets expelled from the ground, so it leaves a hole in the ground in some ways, and then the ground goes down.
Shinji Sasa of the Port and Airport Research Institute created a shake table to demonstrate the process of liquefaction in the laboratory.
If I turn on the machine, the shaking occurs. Initially, the small shaking, just as real earthquake, and then larger earthquake motion occur, and the ground will undergo liquefaction gradually, and then it will affect the stability of structures resting on the ground. That means that houses and structures or buildings will start to sink deeply in the ground. That's that. 3, 2, 1, okay.
So when you look at the map right here, you can see that all the blue areas here, this is already below sea level. We are -1, -2 meters below sea level. And Tokyo is not any other city. You have a major quake waiting for you, so all of that can actually go down by an extra meter. What you have to remember is that all the sediments below the city, a lot of them are a mixture of water and sand, and once all of this get excited, you get liquefaction, the water comes out, and what remains is the land going down.
Liquefaction is a new phenomenon in Tokyo. It too is linked to the rising sea levels.
The groundwater of Tokyo is connected to sea level, so if the sea level goes up, then the groundwater will also go up. It's like a pie chart. We have been dividing that pie. So those slices can be the river flood. Another one can be the liquefaction during an earthquake that brings the land down. Another one can be the storm surge. Another one will be, again, the sea level rise. And all of those elements that are looked on separately will at some point happen together.
Tokyo has one last unique problem. Entire neighborhoods are slowly sinking below sea level. Decades of pumping groundwater for domestic use has left massive cavities below the city's foundations, and some areas are now sinking.
300 years ago, Tokyo was just a village, just a few people, called Edo actually. And during the 19th century, this village became the capital. So on top of a marshland, on top of silty sediment mixed with water, they started to drain this land and built this huge capital. But it means that underneath the ground, you still have the mud flats. What you have below your feet is a mixture of water and sediment. Until 1960s, people used to drink water from the groundwater, meaning that they pumped the water out of the ground. So where the water was, then just a void remains. So the land sinks slowly.
30% of Tokyo's population now lives below sea level, and some homes have sunk as much as 15 feet due to subsidence, the caving in of land. As sea levels rise, the gap between these low-lying neighborhoods and the waters above them becomes ever more dangerous.
海面上昇が、地盤沈下と
The sea level rise is now producing the same effect as the ground subsidence.
今東京では地下水の汲み上げを規
The
制
danger is getting greater and greater.
再び地盤沈下が始まっていると言ってもいい状況が今生まれつつあるわけです。
You have a city which is just at the zero level. So any increase in sea level is already a problem. So this map here is the map of Tokyo. So what you can see in white here is the bay where the water is, and everything else is supposed to be land. But if you look at it, you can see that all the blue areas here, and they are blue for a good reason, it's because it's already below the sea level. If you add 50 centimeters of sea level, you can see that a large part of the city already, in red here, is under water. And then if you add 75 centimeters and 1 meter, you almost have 100 square kilometers of water covering your land.
If the sea rises by 3 feet, 60 square miles of Tokyo will be submerged. Japan's problems are compounded by an economic challenge. Its population is expected to shrink by 1/3 in the next half-century. In the past, a growing population and a booming economy helped pay for megaprojects to prevent and combat natural disasters. Those days are ending. 40% of Japan's population is projected to be over age 64 by 2050. The country's birth rate is plummeting, and it isn't expected to rebound to present levels for another 45 years.
So Japan has been very good at facing its issues so far. They've been working very hard on all of this. You have a lot of engineered systems that are top-notch. But in a country where the population is increasingly aging and where money is going to be scarcer and scarcer, how do you maintain all those systems? The population which is aging plus the climate change is a real ticking bomb for Tokyo. How do you build new dikes and new levees when you don't have the fund for it? So it's a real challenge.
Kamaishi is 350 miles up the coast from Tokyo. It's an extreme example of Japan's plummeting population. Less than 40,000 people live here, 25,000 fewer than in 1980. The city is home to the largest seawall in the world.
The north wall was 3,200 feet. The southern wall was 2,200 feet. And the part where the ships go through was 1,000 feet long. So as a whole, it was 6,500 feet, over a mile long. Kamaishi's breakwater is constructed at a depth of 200 feet below the surface. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records.
The breakwater cost $1.6 billion and took 3 decades to complete. In 2009, the job was finally done. Just 2 years later, Japan's tsunami crushed this marvel of engineering like a toy and swept through the town. The bodies of about 1,000 people were never found. Akiko Iwasaki runs a hotel outside Kamaishi. She witnessed the horrific 32-foot-high tidal flood that destroyed her city. She was also personally struck by tragedy. One of her relatives was among those killed.
One of my family members tied herself to a pillar at the entrance of her house with a rope. She was a senior, and when the firefighters urged residents to evacuate, she probably didn't think the tsunami would come up that high. She didn't run away. When she was found, her son said that in the time she took to tie herself to the pillar, she could have run to safety.
Sadness turned to outrage. How could this expensive mega project that was built to protect the city fail so catastrophically? The seawall is now being rebuilt. And how to make it certain not to fail again is Yusai Ito's job.
Since we're in the midst of construction, we see some different heights. However, they will be covered with concrete and they will all be level. The tsunami came from offshore, crossed the mouth of the bay breakwater, and moved into the city. It was about 33 feet high.
The seawall had been designed to withstand a wave of that height. The engineers who designed the seawall were determined to figure out why and how it failed with such loss of life.
Before the tsunami in northeastern Japan, we didn't understand exactly how barriers were destroyed.
In his hydraulics lab at Waseda University, Dr. Tomoya Shibayama is trying to solve the mystery.
This is the simulator for the waves caused by the tsunami or the storm charge. From the back of this waterway, the storm charge comes this way. This structure here simulates the breakwaters. The waves go beyond the breakwater and reach the towns near Tokyo. We observe how the water behaves in this area using this hydraulic simulator.
Using the simulator to recreate a storm surge, Shibayama and his research assistants recorded on a high-speed camera. A colored dye allows them to see the water's behavior in detail.
3, 2, 1, go.
Once the experiment is complete, Shibayama can look at the data collected by cameras and sensors to determine the water's motion after it hits the barrier. He concludes that the storm surge washed over the wall, putting weight on the top, and then dealt a vicious backwards blow to the support structures underneath.
It gets really fast here. We must check the velocity field and pressure field.
Once it gets past the breakwater, powerful vortices push and pull at the concrete in all directions with a force the wall's designers did not anticipate. Still, some experts believe that even Japan's most advanced engineering is no match for the increasing power of the sea.
The hard solutions that people talk about, various gates, levees, walls, and so forth, I'm not sure it's practical because sometimes it's just not clear to me that the science is there that says it's really going to do the job it's meant to do.
Vishan Chakrabarty is a New York architect specializing in storm resilience.
It's a basic Albert Einstein thing. Matter doesn't just disappear. The water doesn't magically go away when you build a wall. It gets redirected to someone else's doorstep. And I think that's a fundamental issue that, again, I can't solve as an architect. I think most people who deal with this can't really solve it.
No wall is fail-safe. So I think it does tend to encourage people to live behind the wall in a way that's not resourceful, in a way that trusts the wall to never fail. And that's not good.
Urban designer Christina Hill warns against what in her specialty are called hard solutions. The water always wins.
When you build a wall, you size the foundation for the height of the wall. If you can't just add more bricks to the top and have it be structurally sound. So future generations, if that's not big enough, have to actually replace it.
Dr. Shibayama also knows no seawall is invincible. The revised plan is not to build higher or even stronger. Rather than try to deflect the storm surge, the new breakwater is designed to absorb its energy, and in extreme cases, allow water to flow over top without ripping it apart.
The role of such hard structures as breakwaters and tsunami storm surge walls isn't a complete defense. Rather, as with the case of Kamaishi, they delay the storm's impact by reducing its energy. What we need to change moving forward is that we are in the era in which each one of us must think about how we are going to survive and how we are going to protect our families, even if water goes over hard structures.
Typhoons, tsunamis, earthquakes, rising seas, liquefaction, sinking neighborhoods. Tokyo, the world's most populous city, has the world's largest set of problems.
So when you pile up all of those elements together, so the sea level will rise 1 meter, plus the quake, that's 2 meters, plus eventually a typhoon that can bring the water level a meter higher, so that's 3 meters. And if you are unlucky, at that time you have flood from the rivers, or you have a small tsunami that are predicted to be between 1 and 1.5 meter. All piling those elements together, well, you're in deep trouble. It's not a question of is it going to happen, it's a question of when it is going to happen.
Nonetheless, Tokyo may be one of the very few cities in the world seriously grappling with the challenge of climate change. It's figured out engineering solutions before, and with sea levels rising, Japan now needs to do it again. In 1993, before climate change was much discussed, Tokyo decided to tackle its existing flood problem with a mega project that many believe was decades ahead of its time. Japan built a futuristic cavern to protect itself against water from above, below, or from the surrounding sea.
We are in the surge tank. We have come down to 65 feet below the ground. On the left-hand side is shaft number 1. Further down the tunnel, we also have shaft number 2, 3, 4, and 5. The overflow from flooding is collected through these shafts and goes through the tunnel to come up through shaft number 1 gradually. The water then flows into the Showa drainage pump station through this surge tank.
When water floods Tokyo, this is where it all goes.
The accumulated water will rise, and eventually it will reach a certain level. Then it gets forced through the 4 pumps of the Showa drainage pump system to be drained out to the Edo River. We have the water flowing into our facility about 7 times a year on average. Out of those 7 times, for about 60% of the time, the water flows into here and is forced out to the Edo River. For the remaining 40% of the time, we store the water here as it can hold up to 670,000 tons. And then the water gets returned to the river it came from.
The system can hold up to 65 million gallons of water and can pump it out as quickly as it comes in. Lewis McKenna is a UK-based engineer focused on the problem of stormwater management.
For the mind's eye to capture the scale and size of these silos, you can take the Statue of Liberty and place it inside one of those silos. That's how big it is. It's quite impressive. Flooding in Tokyo is a big challenge. If they didn't have that type of protection, they will be gone.
It took 13 years to construct this facility from 1993 to 2006. In actual figures, it cost 230 billion yen.
That's more than $2 billion.
Some domestic and international evaluations consider this to be expensive. However, the flood damages in this region have been reduced to approximately 1/10. Therefore, I think it is not that expensive when you take the flood damages into consideration.
In 2015, after a record rainfall, this temple to engineering was filled to the brim. But the heaviest of those rains missed Tokyo, with the greater impact outside the city to the northeast. Kuniharu says the giant Showa drainage pump system could not have coped if that storm had directly hit Tokyo.
I heard it was the greatest amount of inflow and drainage since this facility began its operation. Our facility has 4 pumps, and we usually use 1 or 2 at a time. 2015 was the first time all 4 pumps operated at full capacity simultaneously for more than a week to drain the water in an effort to mitigate flooding in the region.
Once the tank is full, it drains into the Edo River at a rate of 53,000 gallons, the capacity of an Olympic-sized swimming pool, every 12 seconds. It's the most advanced flood mitigation system on the planet. But recent record rainfalls are too much for even the massive reservoirs to handle.
We do get questioned about what happens if we had a rainfall of a similar scale. And we must admit that we are not fully certain. To build a facility in the first place, there is an expected amount of water that will flow into it. This facility was designed to cope with that amount. But if there is a rainfall or water flow that is above this upper limit, we will not be able to take it in nor drain it out. It is unavoidable that the local communities will pay the price in such a case.
With increased rainfall and rising seas, engineers like Dr. McKenna believe the facility is no longer 100% effective.
Even with this amazing superstructure, they still recognize that because of climate change, because of the rise in sea level, and because of the potential using scenario modeling and looking at the worst case scenario of what potentially could be the worst case type of tidal surge, in addition to maybe a typhoon event, they recognize this protection that is currently in place will not be fit for purpose. That will be something for them to discuss and feature in their future planning for Tokyo, but it will need to be put in place, or else Tokyo will be submerged by flooding.
こちらは目黒川水門です。こちらは目黒川水門です。ただいまより水門の定期運転を行います。
Tokyo is protected by a series of 44 floodgates along the city's many rivers. They are designed to stop storm surges as high as 26 feet. The highest ever recorded in Tokyo is only 10 feet.
In the event of tsunamis or storm surges, we are supposed to close the gate when the water reaches a certain level.
Even with sea level rise, the floodgates offer substantial protection to over a quarter of Tokyo.
You see that there are seawalls all around the gate, and the walls look high, but inside the walls, it's actually fairly low. So if we don't close the gate, the area inside the walls would be submerged.
If the water overflows the riverbanks, pumping stations are activated.
こちらポンプなんですけれども、
When the water level on the inner side of a closed water gate rises with rain, you use this pump to move the water accumulated inside the gate to the other side of the gate.
吐き出すという、そういう目的のポンプです。
The next line of defense is what's called super levees, which are currently being built all around Tokyo. Dr. Christina Hill believes the levees are Japan's best long-term solution against the rising sea.
What they did was they piled up all this earthquake-safe material, so that means carefully sorted gravels and sands, and then they extended everybody's property lines up into the air through that new material and gave the original property owners rights to redevelop buildings on top that now have water views in some cases. So I think it's a fantastic idea. Even if the dike is overtopped, if water comes over the top, they've built terraces on the backside that would slow that water down as it moved towards highly populated areas of Tokyo. It's so important to slow flooding down.
Nobuyuki Tsuchiya is lead engineer on the super levee project.
大変な地盤沈下をしたために、
With the ground subsidence, we had to reinforce the levees by adding height. That's why this one looks a bit steep. When it was originally made, it was more gradual. Because we added the height, it's a bit unbalanced. Because it's such a serious problem, we've been working on this super levee project, which would make this residential ground as high as the levees and defend the community from water.
The super levees were planned to run for 540 miles along 6 rivers to a height of 30 feet. But that plan was so expensive, it was scaled down to protect only the most vulnerable, low-lying areas. Still, it comes at a cost to Tokyo's landscape, and for residents who have to leave their homes as their entire neighborhoods are elevated.
And then we fill the land and raise the ground level. Then we build roads, parks, and rebuild the town from scratch. Then the residents can come back.
The people of Tokyo have come to realize that they have few good options. It's either evacuate for a short time for rebuilding or abandon their homes for good.
It's going to be challenging, but if this levee breaks, it's not only these houses that get destroyed, but also the water would overrun the whole Tokyo area. If you think about that, then asking for some cooperation and time from the residents here would make the most sense for the safety of Tokyo.
Tokyo has to seek a whole array of solutions and keep re-engineering itself for a future of rising seas.
So the coastal defenses in Tokyo are some of the best in the world by a long range. And Tokyo City has been rising up their defenses to meet those challenges. Does it mean that it's going to be enough for the future challenges? That's another question.
The city may have to consider ideas from outside of Japan. Kunle Adeyemi is an architect whose focus is on building near and even on water. Faced with climate change, he believes humanity has to adapt its thinking before it's too late.
I am a realistic optimist. And what I mean by that is that I'm realistic in the sense that, I go to Tokyo and I see the impact of sea level rise, climate change, or simply water. I just see places that used to be land are now covered by water. That is the real fact. I don't want to see that as a problem. I want to see that as an opportunity. And how do I deal with this opportunity where I have to learn to live with water as opposed to fighting it? And that's what I see. We're producing infrastructure for water culture.
Adeyemi has proposed an experimental design for temporary, low-cost floating habitats that can be used for housing, office space, or schools.
Well, so the idea is that we're trying to create a building system where the components are easy to fabricate in any kind of local region and assemble. No matter where you are in the world, you can find a particular class of timber that will be suitable for the production of the structure.
Adeyemi's design has been considered for several cities, including Tokyo. It can be easily adapted to Tokyo's unique environment. Temperatures rarely drop below freezing, and the structure can be made to ride out heavy rains and waves.
We've used 2 systems so far. The first being just very basic recycled plastic barrels that are used in industrial areas. And the second has been the expanded polystyrene, which is used in construction. We know there are different technologies for creating flotation devices that would enable this to work in different parts of the world.
Engineer Toshio Nakajima has an even more ambitious idea. He's proposed an entire floating city in Tokyo Bay.
The concept of this floating city is to make the lowest land as safe as possible. So we dig it out to make the low land even lower, and then we flood it. After putting the water in, we build the floating foundation, and we live on it, so that when it rains and the water level goes up, the city itself is raised with the water and protects itself from water disasters.
Nakajima based his design on the Megafloat, a floating airplane runway in Tokyo Bay that has proven to be very effective. Nakajima's city would use the same technology, basically a gigantic modular floating dock.
This water is taken from the Arakawa River, and the water goes through the city and goes out into the sea. So the city controls the water. The energy we need to move the water through the city is generated in this area here by using the solar panels. We would have a big tank underwater located below the city to store rainwater too. We won't need anything difficult technology-wise. If we're serious about it, we can build it anytime.
Nakajima's floating city would look something like this video simulation. It would be able to withstand sea level rise, storm surges, and extreme rainfall. But Tokyo's cash-strapped government has not approved the plan so far.
I think it's not only Tokyo, but in all of Japan, people want to keep their conventional ways. I have the impression that many people are conservative and not open to new ideas.
Tokyo has to survive the rising waters. The future of Japan depends on it. Yet that may mean reshaping the city by retreating from the areas in the greatest danger.
One of the cheapest solutions and one of the easiest solutions, at least on paper, might be the retreat from the most floodable areas of Tokyo.
By the end of the century, Tokyo's world-famous Shibuya district could be one place to be abandoned to the waters.
We are going to see the population shrinking, so less people in the city. And that's maybe a chance to remodel the city in which we live. How can we concentrate people in safe areas and abandon slowly and naturally areas that are too dangerous to live in?
I think the question is not just about whether we retreat or we stand our ground, because that sets this opposition between humanity and the environment. It's a reconsideration of how to ensure that there's coexistence. So there needs to be a balance, and I think we've always created walls between us and the environment, and now we need to let go of the walls and find new ways of bridging the gap.
Some believe solutions may be rediscovered from history. Resiliency is now a buzzword of climate change engineering and design, but it perfectly describes what the people of Tokyo have been doing for centuries.
Our ancestors made the city here on a low, flat land, good for agriculture, and developed the city. People learned to live with the water when there was flooding. It's like a city in the water. In order to live there, people made their residence higher. We call it constructing a mizuya or mizuka, a shelter from the flood. But when you go to work, you go on a boat. When the water recedes, you just hang your boat under the floor of your house. So people live flexibly with the water. It was not about fighting the risk, but predicting it, accepting it, and living with it.
Tokyo is facing a huge amount of challenges, but people are still here rising to those challenges, and the way they look at it, human beings are part of nature, part of the environment. Those hazards and disasters are also part of the environment we live in, and we have to be able to live with it.
Those who lived through the most recent disasters to strike Tokyo are still adapting to their changing world. But they know they face challenges previous generations never did.
It's over there. This is the manhole that popped out of the ground. It's left as a monument. This is it. It got pushed up out of the ground. It reminds me that this happened. And it makes me think that we don't want something like this again. My view now is that this is a place to pray for no more disasters.
Despite his prayers, sea levels continue to rise. Typhoons grow stronger, and it rains more than ever.
Yes, I'm worried so much that I can't sleep. That's why at this moment too, we're trying to defend the city as much as possible against the water. We're building super levees, strengthening seawalls, improving pumping stations, and so on.
Human beings need to see danger. They need to know the world they live in order to become more resourceful over time. We have a long haul here with climate change. It's not going to be over in 50 years. We need multiple generations to become courageous and resourceful and smart with their money and technology and care about each other.
With today's level of funding, today's engineering, there is no clear answer on how to engineer our way out of this problem. But we're thinking about 50 years, 100 years time from now. And the engineering systems are going to progress as well. Nobody can tell what kind of solution we're going to be able to create or build in 100 years.
I would definitely say it is the Godzilla of all problems. And I believe a lot of the problems we're facing from climate change will require engineering-led solutions. And whether an engineer can take on Godzilla is what we're trying to find out.
It scares the bejesus out of me. You know, living near the water, I think, is something that is so core to the human spirit. And even people who don't live near the oceans, they go to lakes, they go to rivers. I think this is just, we come from water as a species. And so to me, it's just so tragic, the idea that we now have to think of water as an enemy. What we have right now is we have a toolkit that can help us make things better in the short term. That's only going to buy us some time as we figure out this problem at a global level, but it's at the global level that it has to be figured out.
Engineers, planners, and civic leaders in Tokyo are addressing their epic challenge with technology, engineering, and imagination, seeking solutions to protect the city for decades to come.
Tokyo is trying to keep the water away because it's being conventional. They're trying to fight against the water. But we can't keep doing that because the water is something more powerful than us. There's no way we would win.
The more we learn to evolve and adapt to what seems to be, at least in the next 50, 100 years, the path, the better we are in creating more livable environments. And I think the human species is an incredibly intelligent species, and Tokyo will learn to live with water.
Even though we've been trying our best, I don't think we can say that we're fully prepared for disasters.
Major funding for Sinking Cities is provided by Dr. P. Roy and Diana T. Vagelos. with additional funding from Sue and Edgar Wackenheim III, and the Mark Haas Foundation. Sinking Cities is also supported by the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations and by viewers like you. Thank you.